Bloodborne's gameplay is unfolding before us. Get it? Because the scythe is unfolding. Anyway, the game is being played on the show floor of Gamescom, where a new trailer was also shown. And there's a lot of news flying around from different publications, so there's lots we can chat about. First up, weaponry and offense. So if you've played a Souls game, you know how important weapons are. In most games, weapons reflect your character. You know, you're spec'd a certain way, so you choose daggers or a fast weapon. But in Souls games, I think it's the other way around. Your weapon takes center stage, and it defines the character and the way you play. In Bloodborne, this is no different. In fact, I'd argue that it takes it to the next level. So, with a gun in our left hand and a melee weapon in our right, we identify as one of the hunters stalking the streets of Yharnam. We've just learned that pressing L1 on your controller will alter the state of your held melee weapon. So what was once a short one-handed hatchet that was designed for use in narrow corridors could become an elongated two-handed scythe for dealing with foes at a distance. With the press of a button, you change the range, damage, look, and feel of one weapon, essentially doubling your arsenal of attacks. This is really cool. I keep watching this transformation of the scythe over and over again. One small detail you see in this clip is that the player actually elongates the blade during a swing, adding the range he needs to hit another enemy. This is really cool stuff. It just adds so much depth to the game. Moving on to your left hand, if you have a gun in that hand, then L2 will simply fire that gun, and we've been told that there are a range of firearms, but the only ones we've seen so far are the shotgun-style weapons. And you might be thinking, these guns, they're going to be so overpowered, they're just going to rip through any enemy I shoot. But I think you'd be wrong, because from what I understand, we won't be using guns in that way. For one thing, ammunition is going to be apparently deliberately limited. For another thing, players of Bloodborne noted that guns aren't actually primarily used for damage, they're used to stun. So you fire a grape shot at an enemy and they'll flinch for about half a second. You go up to that enemy and you press R1 while he's stunned and you perform a critical attack. This teaches us that guns are a method of crowd control. You know, just like you parry someone, they go into a repostable state. Well, now when you shoot someone, it appears that they will go into that same state, and they're a method of initiating criticals and a method of crowd control. So far, we haven't actually seen them used to deal a lot of damage to opponents, which I'm sure is really reassuring for a lot of you. And one thing I find really interesting is that guns are now, apparently, a staple part of the gameplay, just like shields would be. Every player, apparently, seems like they're going to be going through the game with a gun in their left hand. The gun is usurping that traditional slot of a shield, and it just seems like it reflects that offensive style of gameplay that we're going to see. R1 with a melee weapon performs a simple series of slashes just like you're used to. R2 is still a slow, strong attack, but it's a little bit different this time around. By holding down R2, you can charge the attack, presumably performing more damage the longer you charge it. According to a few sites that I read, this charge-up attack can also be used to stun enemies. Much like I just explained before with the gun, this will put them into a repostable animation where you can perform a critical attack. So that'll be really interesting to see. I think it also depends on your positioning. A few sites were saying that if you do the charge-up attack behind an enemy, it could initiate a critical, so we'll have to wait and see. I don't know exactly. Anyway, speaking of controls, the circle button is still your designated dodge button, but it's also a bit different this time around. Tapping it when you're locked on will make your character dash around an enemy much faster than a roll would. Tapping it when unlocked apparently also allows you to perform a roll, so you have rolls when you're unlocked and you have dashes when you're locked on. As you guys can tell from all this, all the controls seem like they're changing really subtly, but you know, a Souls veteran will still be able to get used to them, but the smallest changes like these could have a huge effect on the way combat works. A good example of these subtle changes is the triangle button. So pressing the triangle button will now heal your character, which brings us onto healing. The brand new Estus is something called a blood vial, and assumedly it works almost identically to the way Estus did, except now we have a dedicated button for this heal, and the charges are now visible in the top left. So what does this mean? Well, it can be assumed that they want you to be aware of this healing potential at all times. This implies that we'll be taking more damage, and that there might also be more emphasis on knowing how much healing you have remaining. One of the things I dislike about Dark Souls 2 is the fact that you can stock up on life gems, and the fact that they're putting one element of healing center stage implies that blood vials might be more valuable. Estus just was not as valuable in Dark Souls 2 as it was in Dark Souls 1, because, the addition of life gems means you can heal between battles, so the fact that they're putting blood vials center stage makes me a bit more excited about healing. The only thing we don't know is how we replenish blood vials. I assume it's going to be the same as in Dark Souls, where you can just rest at a bonfire to replenish your Estus or blood vial, simply because we know that a checkpoint system similar to bonfires still exists in Bloodborne. But blood vials aren't the only way to heal. Nope. There's another way to heal, and it's one of the most exciting things about Bloodborne because, to me, it really reflects the new style of play. So in Dark Souls, you're encouraged to have a defensive approach to combat. You have to have your shield up, you have to wait for enemies to make a move, you have to block then attack. That's a really defensive way of playing. Going without a shield in Dark Souls makes the game harder, for example. In Bloodborne, this isn't the case, and they're building in ways to reward the player for being more offensive and taking more risks and being more Rambo, One such method is the new health regain system. So this is a system that rewards players for taking more risks and being more decisive and strategic in their offensive abilities. The regain system allows players to recover health lost after taking damage, and this is achieved by striking back at enemies within a short time period with a bladed weapon. So let me explain. Imagine you take damage. Instead of losing that health immediately, the damage you took is shown off as yellow in the HP gauge and will deplete over time if you hesitate to strike. If you hit back while you're still losing this yellow health, then your health will stop depleting from the damage you took. So basically, when you get hit, you have two options. A, you can accept that you're going to lose that health and keep playing safely, or B, you can run the risk of going even more offensive after you've taken damage, running the risk of replenishing the health you lost, or taking even more damage than you took in the first place. This means that you'll have to be smart and strategic with your strikes, as some offensive play could actually